Welcome back to Literacy Listens, the podcast where we explore how listening comprehension supports reading and what that means for classroom practice. I'm Amber, and I'm here with Brian, our listening comprehension expert.
Hey, Amber. Great to be here.
Before we get started, a quick note. The voices you're hearing on this podcast are AI generated, and this script was created with support from AI tools. The ideas you're hearing come from research curated by Read Charlotte, a nonprofit focused on improving literacy outcomes for students in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, we're talking about a skill that every single one of us uses constantly, even outside the classroom, catching ourselves when we get lost. That moment when you suddenly think, wait, what? That's comprehension monitoring.
Exactly. And I want to start with a quick scene. Imagine a teacher plays this line for students. "I love being outside in the rain," she said, running to grab her umbrella. Most students hear it and move on. But one student raises her hand and says, "That doesn't make sense." And that moment, that's comprehension monitoring at work.
Right. She says she loves the rain, but she's grabbing an umbrella so she doesn't get wet. Something doesn't line up, and the student noticed it.
And that noticing is everything. Comprehension monitoring is when students aren't just listening or reading, they're checking meaning as they go and noticing when something doesn't fit.
And this is a skill students begin developing long before they're strong, independent readers. In fact, listening is the perfect training ground because students can pause, ask questions, check meaning with a peer, or hear the teacher clarify in the moment. When they're reading on their own, they don't get that same real-time feedback.
Exactly. Building the skill through listening helps students build the habits that later support reading. In the DEAR model, or the direct and indirect effects model of reading, comprehension monitoring is one of the higher order skills. It helps students keep track of meaning, notice when it breaks down, and decide what to do next.
So let's dig into the big idea. How would you define comprehension monitoring in plain language?
It's the ability to pay attention to whether what you're hearing or reading makes sense and to use a strategy to fix it when it doesn't. It's thinking about your own thinking.
And it interacts with other higher order skills like inference and reasoning, right?
Yes, these skills work together. Comprehension monitoring helps students catch the exact moment when the clues don't fit, and then they rely on skills like inference, reasoning, vocabulary, and background knowledge to repair meaning. All of these contribute to listening comprehension, and in turn, listening comprehension then supports reading comprehension.
So comprehension monitoring doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of that whole system.
Right. And one really important point, children can comprehend oral language at a much higher level than they can read on their own throughout elementary school. That means we have years to strengthen skills like comprehension monitoring through listening before students rely on those skills independently in reading.
That's such an important reminder. So let's get practical. How do teachers actually help students develop this internal GPS that alerts them when something doesn't make sense?
Modeling is key. Teachers can make their own thinking visible by pausing during a read aloud and saying things like, that sounded odd, or wait a minute, that didn't quite add up, or why would she grab an umbrella if she loves the rain? When teachers pause and name the confusion out loud, students learn what it sounds like to notice a breakdown.
And after naming it, you show a fix-up move.
Exactly. You might say, let's listen to that part again, or let me summarize what we've heard so far, or could the character mean something different than what she said? Or what do I know that helps this make sense? These are the oral versions of fix-up strategies. Students learn when something doesn't fit, I can stop, replay, ask, or rethink.
And over time, that teacher modeling turns into student self-talk. You start hearing kids whisper, "Wait, what?" or "Can we hear that again?" on their own.
That's the goal, moving from external reminders to internal monitoring. A quick, consistent routine helps. Even just 5 minutes a day where students listen to a short passage, hear the teacher model one fix-up move, and then get a chance to try it themselves can make a meaningful difference.
And the way this looks shifts across grade levels.
Definitely. With younger students, you might start with silly stories or mixed up sentences. Things like, the dog climbed a tree and started meowing. Kids love pointing out what doesn't make sense. As they grow, you gradually move from noticing silly contradictions to catching more subtle inconsistencies, and eventually to evaluating the logic or evidence in more complex texts.
And even in upper grades, it's still the same core idea, noticing when something doesn't match expectations and stopping to fix it.
Exactly. Whether it's a picture book, a podcast clip, or an argument in an informational text, the teacher's role stays the same. Model noticing, name the fix-up move, and give students time to practice it out loud.
And this connects perfectly with what we talked about in the last episode. If inference is the detective skill, piecing clues together, then comprehension monitoring is the moment the detective realizes something doesn't add up and decides to look again.
Yes, it's that wait a minute moment. Those micro moments of confusion are where real comprehension happens.
So here's a reflection question to take into your next read aloud. How might you model what it sounds like to catch yourself when something doesn't make sense and then show students how to fix it? And next time, we'll build on this by looking at text structure, how the way a text is organized helps students make sense of what they hear and read. Thanks for listening to Literacy Listens. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and visit listeningcomprehension.org for show notes and more.
See you next time.